Hi everyone, welcome to this episode of Gunpla TV, sponsored by HobbyLink Japan. This episode, you'll notice the setting is a little different. We're in the process of moving into a proper studio type of environment, and we're busy setting that up. So in the meantime, well, all we really have is this, but it's enough to make it work. Last week we worked on the Strike Freedom foot, the first look at the PG here on Gunpla TV, and today we're going to be looking at the leg. And as you can see, there's a lot going on here, and it's going to take some time, so we're going to get into it really quickly. So here's the perfect grade Strike Freedom's leg. You can see it's got this amount of articulation we mentioned before, and it's actually divided into, of course, several subsections: the top and the lower half of the leg, the ankle joint, and also the knee. So we're going to look at how this all goes together. So first off, we'll put this to the side, get my trusty tools, and we'll start going. Now, first thing they start you with is these coated parts here, and these do have undergates on them, as you can see. There's undergates on here, and I've left them on just to point out that they're there, but I will now, of course, take them off. And we're not going to do anything too serious here. We're just going to make sure that they get removed. Also, it's at this point where you're going to insert these little plastic pieces that are not polycaps, but act like polycaps. And with them on each side, we're just going to put this together here. Sorry. My first step is already finished. Now the next part, actually, I've gone ahead and I've prepped almost every stage here because we don't want to take up too much time here. But you can see that they've got the silver piece. This is the piston. And the piston doesn't actually move in the knee. What they do is they've included these pieces, and as the knee bends, the armor is actually pulled away from the piston, as you can see here. If we bend it up at the top here, it's actually pulled away. The piston's not moving, but this armor is pulled down to give that same kind of effect. So with this piece, I've got everything in here already, so I'm just going to slide it into the top, like so. Sorry, I'm going to put that back now. This is supposed to go on afterwards, but I stuck it on first to save time. We'll see how much time it actually saves. Like this, before we put on the next part to close it in here. We'll do our best to make sure we can line everything up. Now again, the manual indicates that you're actually sticking the narrower part in first, but I found when I do that, that the thick part, it's really difficult to get in. So I go ahead and I actually stick the thicker part in first, and then I'll stick the narrow part in because it doesn't have to go in as far. So just like that, it's not much quicker. I add one more piece on the top, and you're all set. Now, from this point, you're going to start adding more of the colored gold armor here, the shiny armor pieces. And these are, of course, undergated. I've taken the undergates off. So what we got to do is make sure that they line up here. You can see there's lots of holes here. They need to line up with these series of holes. If we can get it right here. And it kind of sits in there, but you have to hold it while you put the other half on. Make sure it's lined up. Don't press too hard, but there you can see the back part is on there. And from there, we're actually getting down to the lower half of the knee here. This little swivel goes in here. Just plug it in. And again, I'm going to do it my way, just because it just seems so much easier. And so far so good. This is what we're looking at so far. You can see that this matches up here. This is actually the top part of the leg. Alright, turn the page. Now back to the shiny armor parts, as well as these parts. These parts are a different shade of gold. I actually think that this is the best shade there is. It's not a coated like these ones. It's molded more in this color. It's not so shiny, but I like the more subdued, dull look that it has. And of course these are undergated. They're not coated so much, but they are undergated. So we'll remove those undergates carefully. before we line everything up here. Okay, those pieces are ready. So the first part is, here's this hole. This has to line up here with the part that has the piston. It also goes in this little hole here. Oh, there's an undergate. Gotta make sure I get that. It's actually, well, it is time consuming. It's actually relatively simple the way they've designed it. You know, there's nothing that's really making me pause or, you know, have to stare at the manual for minutes at a time to make sense of it. These just cover on what you've already assembled down towards the knee here. And there we go for this part. Now, for all intents and purposes, the top half is finished. So we put this here. And the next step is actually comprised of 3 pieces. And these are all of the coated parts here. They're all coated. And once they go together, they actually have to fit onto this in a specific way. So this flips down. And then from the underside, this goes in. And it's going to make that noise. Click. And then it has to go up and into here. But what I found when I was putting it in originally is this sticks out really far for some reason. You actually have to get it lined up properly before it will bend the way you want it to. Once I put in, I can bend and this thing will go in. It should. And then you go back. It's supposed to fold up under there like this. This is what I want to achieve at the end here. And then we just throw on this piece. Why they have this dull piece here, I'm not too sure. They could have gone with a brighter colored one without making too much of a problem. Let's make sure I know where this is going. Right in here, if I can line it up properly. Slides right in, and then you can actually close it in. We got the top of it. Now this is the top half of the leg. What you do with the bottom half of the leg, it's of course it's similar. You have a lot of sub-assemblies, and we're not going to go through that whole process. It's more time consuming than the first half was. But I'll show you what we had to make it up here. So this is the first armor piece that goes on, and it actually slides into the back here. And I haven't put this armor piece on this leg first because I want to have an armor-free leg and an armored leg for comparison's sake. So with that piece, and you also have this piece, and this piece has to be lined up just properly. Well, the piece runs at this angle. You actually have to insert it directly at the same line, otherwise it's not going to work. And it's a little tricky to line up because you can't actually see where it's going from certain angles. And once you get that in there, it more or less clips onto this piece from below. And there's that snap. Now this will, of course, move with the movement of the leg here. It's made to move this way. We put this aside. And here's the big parts for the lower leg. So this goes into position. There's a couple, well, it has a hole for the top half, and you can see that the bottom half is going to be free. It's going to have some movement here. And then we have 2 pieces. This is towards the lower back of the ankle. Slap these together. Make sure you have them in the right spot. Put them on, just like so. And another sub-assembly. This is similar to the one I showed in the foot, but the angles are just slightly different because it doesn't actually slide in this way. It's actually tilted up, if I can explain that properly, but we'll see if we can get it on here. Like so, and you have to make sure that it's lined up properly. Now what you would do is just close this off here. I'm not actually going to do that because I'm missing one piece here that I failed to bring, so if I close this up I'll have to take it apart again. But this would be the lower half of the leg. And then we have the pieces for the ankle. And here's the housing that you actually make for the cylinders that are in the foot. These will slide on like this. Just get your pieces here. It would go in this, like this. And the alignment is really tricky here. It has to fit in just perfectly, and I found that it didn't actually go in the first time until I had completely pushed these all the way in as far as they can go, and then this was able to fit in this way properly. Once that's done, you just add a couple of ankle armor parts and you end up with this completed foot. So we're going to move on to this, and for the application of armor I'm going to use my already assembled leg here. Move these to the side. So with this leg, the first thing that you're going to be doing is applying the armor is actually the one above the knee here, and what they have you do is actually bend the entire leg like this. So this comes down, and then I haven't cut out the armor piece yet. We'll do that right now. This is my armor runner. There's two of them, and they're probably the biggest runners in the kit except for maybe the dragoons. And of course there's two of the same one because you're building two legs the exact same way until you get to the very end. So all I really need is a piece called C10. So I take my C here and I find that piece wherever it may be. And I actually have new side cutters for this. I had made the comment on the previous video that it's a good idea to get a new pair of side cutters when you're working on something like this, a perfect grade, you know. You don't want to be just pulling plastic and tearing it. You want to actually cut it. And I noticed with my previous pliers, and some viewers noticed as well, that what I was doing was actually just tearing plastic instead of cutting. So yeah, I took that to heart and I actually went ahead and got another pair of runners. So, well, I'll clean up with new cutters. I got a new pair of cutters. With new cutters, gate mark cleaning is just that much easier. You can just go on here and make sure that you get rid of any gate marks that may be hanging around. So as this is pulled down, this lines up with the grooves here. We just snap that on, and you can see this part sticks up. And now I'm meant to swing this leg back, and this will lock in place here. It's quite big actually. And now we are adding smaller pieces. This same C runner. You're only really using the C runner for the armor pieces on the leg, except for one exception, which I'll mention later. So that's all I really need to bring. Again, because these gate marks are quite large, you're going to have to make sure that you have cleaned off some of the gate marks to allow it to function properly. With armor, you know, gate marks are more unsightly. They're not so much of a hindrance to movement, but they are more unsightly. This slides in like this to this hole here. Just slides in. You can hear that little snap there. And next up, we're using the Q runner. This is actually the darker parts. So it's not black. I don't know if you can really tell from this video. It's actually a purplish color, very dark purple. Color actually contrasts well with the gold, I think. And when you tend to build models, a lot of people, you'll see a lot of black plastic, or a lot of people paint black, but often black is not quite the best color to go with if you want to do things like panel lining and stuff like that. If you use a dark purple, dark blue, you'll often get a better result.